This time on Fifth Gear, Karun Chandhok and I hit the jackpot, staging one of our fastest ever dogfights to see which of these supercars will be crowned the ultimate road warrior.
Now look at me go! Look at me go! Yeah, 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 yeah!
What is that?
The team tests a new Vauxhall estate with some surprisingly sporty pretensions.
Oh my word!
Karun finds out whether a new GTI from Volkswagen is at last good enough to beat an icon of the super mini world.
But the rear does dance around.
Jimmy DeVille makes an all-time classic MX-5 even better at handling thanks to a simple suspension fix.
This car does exactly what I want, when I want.
And Vicky gets her hands on three brilliant, sporty, second-hand German gems that won't break the bank.
It's fabulous.
Hello and welcome to Fifth Gear. Now, normally, I like to have a leisurely breakfast, think about the day ahead, make some plans, but not this morning. I couldn't wait to get out the front door. I kept on having these thoughts about 600 brake horsepower, 196 miles an hour, letters like GT-R, RS. Want to know what I'm on about? Well, pull out just a bit wider. Go on, a bit wider. There you go.
This is the latest Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a stripped-out ultimate performance version of the world's most celebrated and enduring sports car. It costs £141,000. And this is the Nissan GT-R Nismo. The standard GT-R is bonkers enough, but adding the word Nismo sticks another firecracker up its exhaust and sticks another 70 grand on the price, bringing it in line with the Porsche. It also has the same power-to-weight ratio and the legendary Nissan Skyline heritage to draw upon. So on paper, it looks a close competitor. But is it really good enough to steal the Porsche's crown? German precision and pedigree versus Japanese innovation and PlayStation. Sadly, I can't drive both, so former F1 driver Karun Chandhok has manfully offered to help.
Which one do you want, mate?
Do I get a choice?
No, I'm in the Nissan.
Oh,
We'll be performing 3 tests to discover which of these cars is the most accomplished all-rounder.
First, a drag race. Between them, the GT3 and GT-R have got over 1100 horsepower. But that's no use if you can't put the power down on the track. So ultimately, this is a test of traction and acceleration.
Now, I've got a 3.8-litre V6 twin-turbo, which kicks out 600 horsepower. It's front engine. But of course, I've got four-wheel drive, so if I can't win this one, then I'm doing something wrong.
I've actually got a slightly bigger motor than Jason's got in the GT-R. This one's a 4-litre, but I've actually got 80 horsepower less than him. However, I am 220 kilos lighter than the Nissan, and that should help me get off the line. What's going to be tricky, though, is we've got damp Welsh conditions, which means his 4-wheel drive is just going to give him that edge for the initial launch.
In the right conditions, the Porsche can get to 62 in just 3.2 seconds, using its launch control computer to perfectly balance power and traction. So how does that compare to the Nissan? Well, fact is, we just don't know.
Now, interesting enough, there are no official 0 to 62 times for this because they don't like to publish them, or they don't want to publish them. Likewise, they don't tell you this launch control in this car. But I know there is because I've spoken to someone. So I'm going to get everything configured.
Now, my launch control is super easy. He's going to be here a while by the time he dials in his settings. I press PDK Sport, put my foot on the brake, right foot to the floor on the throttle, and just launch it. German efficiency.
That should be it.
Eventually, I declared myself ready. Let the games begin.
That 4-wheel drive is helping him, but now look at me go! Look at me go! Yeah, 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 yeah! Wow! The 4-wheel drive gave him the launch, but then once I got out of first gear, The Porsche just shot off. It was amazing, that lightweight.
However, it seems my celebrations were a bit premature because over in Nissan land, there had been an operator error.
I appear to have missed a gear. I thought I was in automatic mode, but I was in the manual.
I'm not sure why I defaulted to French at that point, but anyway, I'd messed up by missing a gear. Fortunately for me, it was best of 3.
Here we go, flags up. Whoa!
Good gear change then, good off the line.
He's launched out time much better.
And we blasted in. Whoa.
With my gears sorted, the mighty GT-R had got its power down, and I was back in the game.
Third and deciding run.
Let's see what the Porsche can do on this one.
Nailed it!
Well, round 1 to you.
Yeah, do you know what? I've got to drive hard for the rest of the day because I think that's going to be tough to beat.
Join us later for round 2, when we see which of these titans is the better real-life road car.
Oh, I like that. See, that's just...
Now we're off for a 5th gear team test, and joining us today is car modder extraordinaire, Jimmy DeVille.
Today, the team tested the Vauxhall Insignia GSI Sports Tourer. This Insignia is the first Vauxhall to wear their sporty GSI badge since 2005. Hatchback and estate versions are available, and 2 engine types, a 255 horsepower petrol or, the model we're testing, a 210 horsepower diesel. It's undoubtedly fine on a motorway, but to test out the car's performance image, we brought it to the track. Gentlemen, I bring you the Vauxhall Insignia GSI Sports Tourer, or a estate car.
Hey, it's not a bad thing.
Joe, it's a good-looking car, I think. And it was nothing special, rather big to me. Big.
Big.
Doesn't it look big?
Yeah, it's really big.
Looks like someone's crashed into the side of it. I'm going to be honest with you. It's all messed up.
What is that?
It looks like a gouge.
I quite liked, actually, the sculpted line down the side of it.
Just listen to this.
Oh, you're a plastic.
It's horrid.
OK, there's some itchy plastics inside, but apart from that, it's actually a pretty good car.
It's not Michelin star grub, it's just a pizza. And pizzas are good. I like pizzas.
It seems Jimmy didn't like the Insignia's general styling, but the main thing we were here to comment on was the supposed sportiness of this particular GSI model.
You get lowered, stiffened suspension and skirts.
Yeah, it's been round the Nürburgring 12 seconds faster than the old one. However, that's the petrol version. We had the oil burner.
It's just difficult to get excited about a diesel estate car.
I have found something in the back that I like, and we're all looking in the wrong place because it's there.
Oh. What?
First aid kit.
What do you think then, Jason?
I think the seats are a bit hard.
What did I like about this car? I like the seats.
They look nice. They look good from the back.
They look GSI-y.
I like the seats.
Only automatic.
That's a shame, isn't it?
This is the first Vauxhall to have an 8-speed box.
An 8-speed gearbox is strapped to a 2-litre... I'm still not impressed. 2-litre diesel in a GSI. It just doesn't do what GSI says it does.
Shall we go for a drive?
He's got that look on his face, look.
Strap in.
Yeah.
When we went out for a little drive, the whole team on board, the disappointment began.
Are you feeling like a GSI?
No, because I'm feeling like a taxi driver.
The gearbox is a little bit indecisive. It doesn't really know what it wants to do. It doesn't feel sporty. It doesn't quite feel slick enough. It feels quite soft, even though this is supposed to be...
It feels very soft.
But as always, you know, there was a beast within Tiff.
Sport, dear, sport. Let's have sport.
I mean, he just simply cannot drive a car sensibly.
Is ESC off?
Here we go.
We can't build up
You got any
speed.
Valium? It was only a matter of time before we were going the wrong way.
It does trip.
He's got that look on his face again.
It does trip.
You warned me about that, though.
Do you think it's ever going to be driven in this style, this thing?
The problem is, while the GSI will let you drift a bit, it won't let you drift a lot. With a safe torque vectoring four-wheel drive system, as soon as it's a bit sideways, the power goes to the front wheels, it goes all straight again. Torque vectoring is a system that varies the amount of torque to each wheel in order to optimise grip. It's not really GSI, is it, really? Oh, then it just dies.
It grabs, doesn't it?
Well, it needs another 100 horsepower, doesn't it?
Whoa!
Yes!
No.
Corrects too fast, doesn't it? You can't hold it.
So, apart from Jimmy, who hated almost everything, the team had generally agreed that the Insignia GSI was a decent estate, but a disappointing sports car. So, what are the scores?
It can't live up to the GSI standard. So I'm sorry, because of that, it's a 3 from me.
I'm sorry, Vauxhall, but your new GSI just gets a feeble 4.
If this wasn't the GSI, I would give it 7. But because it's the GSI and it's not quite right, I'm going to give it that.
Middle of the road, number 5.
Which gives the Vauxhall Insignia GSI a team test score of 18 out of 40.
After the break, it's the battle of the Super Minis. Can the best-selling Mini Cooper S be beaten on the track by the new Polo GT-I?
Come on, do it!
While Vicky looks at 3 sharp-looking sports cars that can now be yours for a fraction of their former price.
It has got a fantastic chassis.
Now we're off to Anglesey for another 5th gear shootout. It's a simple idea. 2 equally matched cars go head-to-head and we find out which is the quickest. Today, guest presenter Karun Chandhok will be taking the helm. And this time, we've got a couple of spiced-up Super Minis.
The first has 5 doors, 200 horsepower, and hits 62 miles an hour in 6.7 seconds. It's the latest Volkswagen Polo GT-I and will cost you £23,000. Pitted against it, this version of the Mini Cooper S also has 5 doors. At £21,000, it's a bit cheaper and a bit less powerful. However, it's 60 kilos lighter, so the 0 to 62 time is almost identical. The Cooper S has been a bestseller since its relaunch in 2001, while former versions of the Polo GT-I have largely dipped below the radar. But that may be about to change because VW have completely rethought the car. So is it now a potential mini beater?
When you think of Volkswagen hot hatches, you immediately go to the Golf GTI. The Polo has always sort of lived in its shadow a little bit, but not this time. The engine is a 2-litre, straight out of the Golf GTI, slightly detuned. The Polo GTI has also got the electronic front diff, straight out of the Golf. All these changes have come together to make sure that the Mark 6 is a better hot hatch than it's ever been before. So let's have a go at a time lap and see what the Polo GTI can do. Heading down towards turn 1. Flick the car in. The brakes here are so good. I can just attack the entry of the corner, the back of the car. Really calm. Again in the high speed, you just got that touch of understeer. There we go, there's the grip. Towards the chicane now. Come on, down change, do it! Through the corkscrew now. I must say the damping on the front is really good. Cross the line.
The Polo completes the lap in 1 minute 24.88. Next, the Mini.
In terms of the steering feel, the Mini's actually got a bit more weight, and it gives you a sense of confidence. In these longer corners, look, the back of the car, much less understeer. I'm able to carry so much more speed through the apex of these longer corners. In the slower corners, though, under braking especially, the Mini doesn't stop as well as the Polo. It just feels like it's a bit high. The rear doesn't feel as stable, and the car just has a bit more body roll in it as well. I really don't know which one's going to be quicker.
Better find out then.
Right, here we go. Into turn one, get the back end stepped out of line. Nice, sharp turn in. So much earlier on the power coming out of this corner. Now on the brakes. Whoa, you have to brake a bit earlier with this than I could with the Polo.
By the first checkpoint, the Mini is half a second behind.
Fast right-hander, much less understeer. I don't even have a full lift. Brake hard for the tight left-hand chicane. The back does switch around better than the Polo does, but I couldn't brake as late, and that would have cost me a bit of lap time.
However, by the second checkpoint, the Mini has caught up, thanks to its superior ability through the long sweeping corners.
Through the corkscrew. Now this is where I thought the Polo was very good over the curve. Mini doesn't quite hook up the curves as well, but the rear does dance around. Gotta get it into the last corner. A little bit wide across the line.
The Mini's slightly weaker brakes means it loses out through the final twisty section. It crosses the line a full second slower than the Polo. So although the Mini was more fun to drive, the Polo has a fraction more composure on the limit. And not forgetting those brilliant brakes. It seems that VW has finally produced a Polo worthy of the GTI badge, a car that's capable of taking on the marvelous Mini and actually beating it.
Earlier in the show, we saw Jason and Karun getting to grips with two supremely quick sports cars. Both are brilliant driver-focused machines, but let's not forget that they cost north of £140,000.
Sadly, most of us won't have the budget for a GT3 RS, so let's have a look at some alternatives that will get the pulse racing, but without breaking the bank.
Each of these sporty convertibles can now be yours for around £8,000 with reasonably low miles and in good condition. The Porsche Boxster, the Mercedes SLK, and the BMW Z4 Roadster. I'll start with the Boxster.
Now, we couldn't feature sports cars without the Porsche Boxster. It was born in 1996, and it was Porsche's first purpose-built convertible sports car since the Spider back in 1953. It has got a fantastic chassis with its mid-engine layout, and that definitely makes it more nimble than, dare I say, Porsche 911 with its rear-engine layout. Oh, controversial? Maybe.
And even better news is that your £8,000 budget will now get you into a Series 2 or 987 version of the Boxster. This features a host of revisions, including new lights and interior, plus an uprated version of Porsche's famous flat-six engine, which produces 239 horsepower and propels it to 62 miles an hour in 7.1 seconds.
You turn the steering, the car moves. It talks to you non-stop, through the wheel, through the seat, through the pedals. It's fabulous.
So, if you fancy one of these cars, what must you look out for? Well, the suspension, for starters.
Broken coil springs are the main culprit, and an unlevel stance is a good giveaway that things are not right. Moans and groans as well are a good indicator, and a corner costs about £100 to replace.
And while you're taking a test drive, you might be tempted to think that the brakes are misbehaving.
The brakes in a Boxster 987 are particularly good, but you might not think so to start with, because Porsche's braking system isn't as heavily assisted as other rivals. So, perhaps a good way to check them is to find a quiet stretch of road and do an emergency stop.
Next, the Mercedes.
If you're looking for a sports car that's stylish and elegant, then look no further than the Mercedes-Benz SLK. It manages to combine grace with decent performance and a bit of luxury. These R171 models were made between 2004 and 2010, and this particular car is a 1.8 litre with a supercharger, or compressor, as Mercedes like to call it, and it's got 161 brake horsepower. It'll do 143 mile an hour top speed, and 0 to 62 happens in 7.9 seconds.
Unlike the Porsche and many other sports cars, the SLK has decent boot space, with 300 litres available when the roof is up. So this is definitely one to consider if you like long weekends away.
The engine is in the front of this car, and it definitely feels more nose-heavy than the Boxster. It doesn't turn in quite as sprightly as the Porsche, and it isn't as agile and nimble either. However, what it is really good at is cruising and wafting along.
If you want one of these cars, here's what you need to look out for.
Boot seals are prone to failure, which can result in the wheel well filling up with water, soaking the carpet and then leading to the inevitable rust. This is a quick fix if you catch things early. Seals can be had for around £60.
And please inspect the car's intricate metal roof. If you notice that it's retracting more slowly than usual, then it's usually a problem with the pump. New ones cost £500. However, you might be able to get a second-hand one for around £150. Time for my final Germanic sports car.
Now for the BMW Z4, or E85 to be precise. It was BMW's sports car for the millennium and was introduced in 2002, replacing the outgoing Z3.
You can now get hold of early Z4s for a little over £2,000. However, if you're prepared to accept a slightly higher mileage, £8,000 will just about get you into a very special version of this car, the Z4M. It's powered by a 3.2-litre straight-six engine, putting out 343 horsepower, far more than the other two cars I have today. The result? Well, how does 0 to 62 miles an hour in just 5 seconds grab you?
Fundamentally, when BMW made the Z4, they made a really good car. Front engine, rear-wheel drive that is just as engaging and rewarding as the Porsche Boxster, just delivered in a slightly different way.
Make no mistake, the Z4M is a Z4 turned up to 10, so expect a very firm ride and razor-sharp throttle response. But if speed is your priority, this is certainly a car to look out for. So, what do you need to check before parting with your cash?
The suspension. Rear trailing arm bushes can begin to wear at about 50,000 miles, and also rear springs can snap. It's not uncommon for Z4 owners to fit thicker I-back springs, and they cost from as little as £140 for a set.
And as for that mighty engine, well, don't worry, it is virtually bomb-proof.
Which one would I take home? It has to be the Porsche Boxster, because the driving involvement is just perfect.
After the break, Jimmy DeVille performs some handling magic on an all-time sports car star. While Karun and I take our GT3 versus GT-R battle off the track to see what they're like as everyday road cars.
My bum's already hurting.
Karun and I are out to discover which is the best of these two 190-mile-an-hour supercars, the Porsche GT3 RS or Nissan's GT-R Nismo.
Now, I'd like to say that Challenge 1, a drag race, was a close-fought battle, but it wasn't. Thanks mainly to its four-wheel drive system, the Nismo was the Bismo and blew the Porsche into the weeds.
But in Test 2, the Porsche has a chance to equalize because we're about to head out onto the road. Crazy amounts of power are going to be of no use in this test. It's all about comfort and cup holders.
These cars might be track-focused, but come on, you've shelled out over 140 grand. You'd want to drive them on the road as well.
So now we want to find out how civilized they are as everyday companions. First, the Nissan.
So this is the Nismo version, which is obviously the performance arm of Nissan.
Yep.
It's been around now for 34 years.
Check you out with your research.
Yeah, I'm a geek. But you know, it's nearly twice as much money as the standard GT-R. Are you getting twice as much stuff, apart from a Nismo badge?
Right. OK, it's got uprated suspension. It hasn't got carbon brakes.
And don't expect loads more power, just 30 horsepower as it happens. And although there's loads of carbon fibre, that only saves 27 kilos. In fact, the top speed is identical at 196 miles an hour.
Where else does the 70k come from? You know, 150 grand for a car, it's got to be super special. And this just isn't.
But like all of that, console and stuff, doesn't look like it's 150 grand worth of car, is it?
No.
And there's worse news for the Nismo, because early versions of the GT-R, which was launched in 2008, look almost identical and can now be yours for little more than 30 grand.
But you know what? The seats are comfortable.
They are. Yeah, you're not moving around and stuff, but it's just a stiff suspension, isn't it?
This is as comfy as it will be. I'm in comfort mode.
My bum's already hurting. You got a couple of seats in the back, which you don't have in the Porsche, I suppose.
So that's definitely a bonus.
Yeah. You got cup holders and bits and pieces, so they've gone for a bit of practicality.
Yeah, and then we've got all this GT-R nonsense, all this G meters. What do we want that for?
I can tell you that you are doing a 0.15 G of deceleration for the bridge there.
And the relevance in that is?
I don't know.
To be honest, this seems like a lot of unnecessary information and a bit of a gimmick.
It does pull, doesn't it? You know, the
As a thing to drive, it's impressive. But I'm not sure. I mean, it's a bit kind of in your face, boy racer. Yeah. Arguably, I am, but that's not what I want to project.
It's got grunt though.
It's definitely got some waft.
So, the Nissan's reasonably practical, but the interior and exterior simply don't cut it for a £150,000 car. Time for the Porsche and my first impressions.
I do feel a bit exposed in green out in the open roads. But a bit,
yeah.
It's me!
We're definitely announcing our arrival, aren't we? I mean, the green seatbelt is just one step too far, isn't it?
Thankfully, the GT3 comes in 8 other colours. So what about the ride quality?
I mean, the GT-R was quite stiff, and it's not a comfortable ride. It's probably the understatement of the year. It's not much different, is it?
It's not a massive difference.
No, it's not a massive difference. No. I mean, inside the cabin...
It's noisier.
It's noisier, but...
much more road rumble.
Yeah. I do like how the cup holders are hidden away, though. They're somewhere in there.
Typical Porsche beauty.
Oh, I like that. I do like these little door
handles.
Yeah,
they're really cute. And do you know what? The little chinks of stitching, I mean, you know, a lot of this is all extras. We've got, what, paint, £2.5 grand. You know, these painted air vent surrounds, they're extra. Yeah. White dials are extra. Carbon brakes, nearly £7 grand.
That's a lot of money for the carbon brakes, actually.
In fact, our GT3 had £18,000 worth of extras on it, whereas the Nissan had none. Nevertheless, I was definitely warming to the Porsche's on-road charms.
I mean, we're ticking along here. We're doing, you know, 50 miles an hour. It's 2,000 RPM. It's shifted up into 7th gear, and I feel like I could just try this every day. Like, the seat's comfy, you know, on the little cambers and sort of undulations. It really follows the road.
In fact, the ride quality of the Porsche is about the same as the Nissan. However, they are miles apart when it comes to second-hand prices.
If you take a 10-year-old version of this, the 997 version of the GT-R RS, they're selling for more now than they cost back in the day. You'd have to spend 110 grand to buy one.
Which is amazing. They all hold their value.
And go that way.
And go up.
You're not going to get that with a Nissan.
No.
Do you know what? A bit of car envy was creeping in by now.
You know, later when we get to drive, I've obviously got to drive the Nissan, then you're going to... Can I...
No. You just stay in your little four-wheel drive, right?
No, do you know, just for research, I think...
No. No.
So at the end of our second test, which car is better for everyday road driving?
So in terms of ride quality, nothing in it. Both are quite harsh, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're both built for the track and just not really for bumpy roads. But I think in terms of interiors, this one's a clear winner, isn't it? Just the quality, I thought, of the dash and all those bits and pieces inside, just a step up for the same money.
Feels special. So that's 1-1. One more test to go.
Join us later when we find out just how fast these cars can lap the track. Now it's time for Jimmy DeVille to demonstrate how your car can be upgraded simply and cheaply in your driveway or garage.
Today, we're working with what is possibly the world's most popular little sports car, the Mazda MX-5. It was launched in 1989 and the recipe is simple. Compact, lightweight, a naturally aspirated engine and rear-wheel drive. Plus, Japanese reliability, of course. On driving this MX-5 for the first time, I can really feel that it was inspired by the old British sports car. It's plucky, it's perky, it's a bit of fun. But after 25 years tackling British roads, the suspension has taken a hammering. Its ride is all just a little bit soft, a little bit squidgy. A worn suspension system not only results in a wallowy ride, but grip, stability and steering accuracy also suffers. So, the modification I plan to do today should transform the car's cornering ability and comfort, making it the fast-handling sports machine it was always meant to be. The parts I'm going to fit to each corner of the car are called coilovers. These are basically shock absorbers with coil springs over the top. This set of coilovers cost under £300. Now, they are entry level, but when you consider the miles per hour they're going to give me, they're an absolute bargain. The shock absorber helps to dampen down unwanted oscillations so the car doesn't continue to bounce up and down after hitting a bump. The spring makes sure the car is supported at the correct height and doesn't roll, pitch or dip too much. And these coilovers are adjustable, so I'll be able to fine-tune the suspension later to get the very best combination of comfort and performance. These are the tools you're going to need for this job. Some side cutters, pliers, a couple of bungees, you'll find out more about those later. A very standard spanner set and socket set, making sure you've got the right socket for your wheel nuts. Tape measure, ratchet, a pry bar. Now that's a standard pry bar and we need that, but I'm also going to be using this pry bar, which I call Big Bertha. Today we're going to be using the lift so you can see what I'm doing, but at home you could do it using a couple of axle stands and this, a trolley jack. Right then, to business, and I'm going to start at the front of the car. Most of the job simply involves undoing a few nuts. Once the wheel is off, it's time to remove the brake caliper. Now, when you take the brake caliper off, you don't want to hang it from the brake hose because that could cause damage to it. So what I suggest you do is get yourself a bungee, which has two handy hooks on the end. Wrap it around something on the car, and then once the brake caliper is removed, you can hang it on the hooks, preventing any damage happening to that brake hose. With that out of the way, the brake disc can be removed. The next thing I need to remove is the ball joint. The ball joint allows the front wheels to swivel and therefore steer the car. This process begins by removing the split pin that secures the ball joint lock nut. And then loosen the lock nut. Now we are ready to free up the ball joint. Now there are tools to help you with it, or you can just use a nice big hammer and a pry bar. Paul? Paul is using the pry bar to help the hub assembly and ball joint to separate. Bang! The bottom of the shock absorber is secured with yet another single bolt through the lower wishbone. To loosen the top end of the shock absorber, you have to head under the bonnet and locate the suspension turret. Here's the top two strut bolts, there and there. And once they are undone, it's time for Big Bertha. This is also the bit that's really worth having two people in.
All right, like that.
The two levers are used to prise apart the top and bottom wishbones. The wishbones connect the wheel to the car's chassis and locate it in the correct position.
Okay, then it's a bit of a twist.
So we've levered down the lower suspension arm, the upper suspension arm, bit of a twist, the suspension struts out. Now we're at the rears, and the main difference in doing this job is we don't need to take off the calipers and the disc brakes. In fact, the process is much simpler, starting with the bottom mounting bolt and then the two top ones. Be aware that these are often hidden under covers, like this one in the boot. That's the two rear shocks undone. Now all that's left to do is get them both out. Once again, use a lever to make space to lift out the rear shock absorber and spring. Now that all the old struts are off, you can really start to see the difference between old and new. The old standard shock is completely unadjustable, whereas the new strut has 3 forms of adjustment. I can adjust the preload of the spring, which makes the spring harder or softer. I can also adjust the overall length of the strut, give me different ride heights, and I can also adjust the damping. That is all about the initial impact on the shocks and how the shock deals with it. Right, I keep talking about this when I should be getting on doing it. Prise the wishbones as before to create space for the new coilover to fit through. Paul is fitting the top bolts, leaving me to do the bottom. Then reconnect the ball joint. And don't forget the split pin to stop it working loose. Then refit the brakes. Then the rear coilovers can be bolted into place and the job's done. This suspension mod cost only £300 and took just a couple of hours. It can be done to most cars and the specific suspension settings can be found online. Time for a road test. Straight away, I can feel a difference in the way this car is handling. It's just a lot sharper, there's less body roll. It just feels like it's got a lot more purpose. And even though it's stiffer, there's still a good, comfortable ride. And that has to be a benefit well worth having.
After the break, it's back to the track for the finale of our Supercar Showdown, as we take turns to scare each other in the pursuit of the winner.
Julia fighter, she's a bit sniffy, isn't she? Welcome back to Fifth Gear and the finale of one of our fastest ever dogfights between these two troublemakers, the Porsche GT3 RS and the Nissan GT-R Nismo.
So far, the Nissan beat the Porsche in the acceleration game,
while the 911's fit and finish felt more special on the road.
So now we're going to frighten each other to death by taking these cars out for some full-blooded hot laps.
And with the scores at 1-1, the winner of this test takes the overall victory.
We'll start with the Nismo, but before we fire up the stopwatch, a quick recce lap is called for.
Julia fighter, she's a bit sniffy, isn't she?
So JP, we're getting these tyres nice and warm. Is four-wheel drive on track? What do you reckon?
Well, I reckon it will oversteer if provoked, because I think it fires a load of power to the rear. In fact, we've got some sort of torque split.
Torque split reacts in milliseconds to correct handling issues by moving power to the axle that needs it most.
Yes, a lot of torque through the rear, isn't it?
Can you see the split?
Yeah, I can. You keep an eye on the road, will you? It's interesting because it's all controlled electronically. It's not something that we can adjust, the torque split. Like, you haven't got a button on the steering wheel, for example, to adjust that. It's just happening.
It's just a brain doing its thing. Tell you what, though, it's quick, isn't it?
It's got grunt, doesn't it? We've got these chicanes here, and being an extra 220 kilos, that's going to be a little bit tricky, isn't it, to manoeuvre it as well as the Porsche. You're looking like you have to concentrate quite hard here.
You can feel it's got steel brakes on.
Yeah, that's going to be a disadvantage, isn't it, to the Porsche? Should we see how quick it is?
Go on, then.
Right, on the cone.
Bit of curb there. A bit of understeer, see?
Doesn't change the direction as nimbly as you'd like, does it?
See what it's like in power. Yeah, now the tyres are coming up a bit now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 120 mile an hour down there.
Yeah. Last couple of corners.
No, I probably left a little bit on the table there.
45.27. All right.
So how does the Porsche compare? Well, I think our in-car reactions give you a pretty good idea.
That sounds absolutely amazing, doesn't it?
Oh, it's just balanced. It's just
like gently. Do you know what?
I tell you what, JP, I mean, it's just a nice car. It just feels nice and balanced. It does what you want to do. You can flick the steering wheel, bounce over the curb, you flick the wheel there.
Oh, man, it's...
I must say, though, I felt like the GT-R accelerated better out of the chicanes, didn't it? That torque.
Maybe not that surprising, given the Porsche's only got 470 newton-meters of torque, compared to a massive 652 for the Nissan.
But this one, just with the brakes, you can brake so deep, and the front just gets hooked up.
Go on, let's have a little go and see what that
All right,
time
let's
is.
go. That's properly good, isn't it?
It's good on the brakes, isn't it?
Those carbon ceramics are just... And on the curb, look, you could just hustle it over the change of direction. The electronics do kick in a little bit, though, over the curbs.
I love that up change. Boom!
I mean, it's a proper race car, this thing.
Tell you what, even though it's stiff, it's got some compliance, hasn't it?
I feel like I'm so controlled in it. It's not on edge. It doesn't feel like it's going to bite me. Cross the line! So, Jason, in that, you did a 45.27, but you're refusing to tell me what I've done in this.
Well, only because it's nice to reveal it.
Come on, then.
The time in this is an impressive 43.39.
Oh, wow. That's nearly 2 seconds.
2 seconds. But do you know what? Are you surprised?
No. There's two things. One is it's got carbon ceramic brakes on this one, which is a slightly unfair comparison, but it's 220 kilos lighter, which is a big mass, and it's just more agile, isn't it, in the corners?
I mean, it's epic. I love that car. Love it.
I'd have to say, out of all the, cars I've driven, road track day cars, that's got to be one of the best engineered ones I've ever driven. It does everything I wanted it to do.
But, we can't be fair on this.
No.
This is a great car, fabulous engine, loads of torque, four-wheel drive system.
No.
But in this company, there's only one clear winner. GT3 RS.